The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with excitement. Alien voices filled the massive chamber as representatives from 12 different species gathered for the most important celebration in galactic history. Golden light streamed through crystal windows, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor where hundreds of beings stood waiting. Admiral Vexhai stepped onto the raised platform at the center of the hall. His tall, gray form commanded respect from every creature present. Purple markings along his neck glowed brighter as he prepared to speak. The hall fell silent. Today marks 50 years since the Great Cleansing, Vexhai announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. 50 years since we freed the galaxy from its greatest threat. 50 years since we destroyed the humans. Cheers erupted from the crowd. The snake-like Xerians hissed their approval, while the crystal beings called Vorthak chimed like wind bells. Even the usually quiet Melody clapped their forearms together in celebration. Vexhai raised one clawed hand, and the noise stopped. The humans were dangerous beyond measure. They spread across worlds like a plague. They fought when others would talk. They never gave up, even when defeat was certain. They adapted to everything we threw at them. An old Xerion commander slithered closer to the platform. Tell us again about their final moments, Admiral. Tell us how they begged for mercy. The Admiral's purple markings pulsed with satisfaction. They did not beg, Commander Slicks. That was their weakness, and their strength. Even as our ships bombarded their homeworld, even as their cities burned, they kept fighting. They launched every ship they had against our fleet. And we destroyed them all, added General Kraz, a massive bear-like creature from the Ursani Republic. Not one human ship escaped our trap. Vexhai nodded. Every single human vessel was reduced to atoms. We tracked down their colonies, their hidden bases, their refugee ships. We found them all. We showed mercy to no one because they would have shown mercy to none. The crowd murmured agreement. These beings had lived through the human expansion period. They remembered the fear, the constant wars, the way humans seemed to appear everywhere at once. Humans built weapons when others built gardens. They turned peaceful planets into military bases. They never seemed to sleep or rest. The archaeological teams confirm our victory, Vexhai continued. Earth is dead. Radiation levels remain lethal even now. No life exists on their former colonies. Our deep space sensors have detected no human signals for decades. They are gone. Completely and forever gone. A young Vorthak crystal being chimed a question. What if some escaped? What if they hid somewhere we could not find them? Laughter rippled through the hall. General Kraz's booming voice answered first. Hide where, little crystal? We control every star system within 500 light-years of their former territory. Our patrol ships visit every planet, every asteroid, every space station. Nothing moves in this galaxy without our knowledge. The humans were many things, Vexhai added, but they were not clever enough to vanish completely. They were warriors, not ghosts. They faced their enemies head-on. Hiding was not in their nature. Commander Slicks's scales rattled with amusement. Remember how they fought? Always charging forward, never retreating. They would rather die than run away. Such a primitive species could never learn the art of true concealment. The celebration continued for hours. Stories were shared about the final human battles, about burning cities and destroyed fleets. The aliens toasted their victory with drinks from a dozen different worlds. They felt safe, secure in their knowledge that the greatest threat their galaxy had ever known was gone forever. But as the festivities reached their peak, a soft chime echoed through the hall. All conversation stopped. The chime meant only one thing: urgent news from the fleet. A young Zaltharan officer approached the platform with quick, nervous steps. His purple markings were pale with worry. He whispered something into Admiral Vexhai's ear. The Admiral's expression changed. The confident smile disappeared, replaced by a frown of confusion. What do you mean? Anomalous readings. Our long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures in the Outer Rim territories, the officer explained, his voice barely loud enough for others to hear. The patterns don't match any known technology in our databases. And General Cross pushed closer. What kind of energy signatures? Unknown, sir. The readings appeared for exactly 47 seconds, then vanished completely. Our analysis teams believe it might be some kind of natural phenomenon, perhaps a solar flare from an unstable star. Vexhi's markings dimmed as he thought. The outer rim was far from any major colonies or trade routes. Nothing important ever happened there. But something about this news troubled him. Where exactly did these readings originate? He asked. The young officer checked his datapad. Sector 847, near the old asteroid fields. The area has been dead space for decades. No ships, no stations, no life signs. Send a scout ship to investigate, Vexhi ordered. I want a full report within 3 days. Sir, should we be concerned about cosmic phenomena? Asked Commander Slicks. The universe is full of strange energies and random events. Probably not, Vexhi replied, but his tone lacked conviction. Still, it pays to be careful. We have maintained peace for 50 years by investigating every anomaly, no matter how small. The celebration resumed, but the mood had changed slightly. The aliens continued their toasts and speeches, but a few cast glances toward the great windows that showed the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, in the cold darkness of space, something had briefly appeared and then vanished. Most of the gathered beings dismissed the incident as meaningless. After all, they controlled the greatest fleet in galactic history. Their technology was supreme, their alliance unbreakable. No force in the universe could threaten their combined might. But deep in the back of Admiral Vexhi's mind, a tiny seed of doubt began to grow. The humans had always been unpredictable. Even in death, it seemed, they could still cause worry. As the celebration wound down and the various species departed for their homeworlds, none of them noticed the almost invisible shift in the stars outside the great windows. None of them detected the microscopic probe that had been watching and recording everything from a distance of several light minutes. And none of them knew that their greatest enemy had heard every word they said. Captain Zora Thax guided her scout ship through the darkness of Sector 847. The Times, Silent Wing Times, was one of the Confederation's most advanced vessels, equipped with sensors that could detect a single atom from 1,000 kilometers away. Yet, as they approached the coordinates where the energy readings had appeared, her instruments showed nothing but empty space. Scan complete, Captain, reported her science officer, a thin Melody named Kip. His 4 arms moved across the control panels with practiced speed. I detect no artificial structures, no energy sources, no signs of recent activity. Zora's scaled fingers drummed against her command chair. Like all Zeltharans, she had learned to trust her instincts as much as her technology. Something felt wrong about this place, though she couldn't explain why. Take us deeper into the asteroid field, she ordered. Run passive scans only. I want to know what caused those energy spikes. The Times' Silent Wing Times drifted between massive chunks of rock and metal. The asteroid field stretched for millions of kilometers in all directions. These were the remains of an ancient planet that had been destroyed by natural forces billions of years ago. Nothing lived here. Nothing ever had, or so they thought. Captain, called out Ensign Vrock from the sensor station. The young Xerion's tongue flicked out nervously as he studied his readings. I'm detecting trace amounts of refined metals embedded in some of these asteroids. The concentrations are too high to be natural. Zora leaned forward in her chair. Show me. The main screen displayed a detailed scan of the nearest asteroid. Bright spots of color marked where exotic metals had been detected. The pattern was irregular, almost random, but definitely not natural. It looks like debris, observed Kip, as if something metal was scattered throughout this field. Something large, added Vrock. The distribution pattern suggests an object at least several kilometers in length. Zora felt her blood grow cold. How old are these metal traces? Kip's forearms flew across his instruments. After several minutes, he looked up with confusion. Captain, according to my analysis, these metals were deposited within the last 5 years. Possibly as recently as 18 months ago. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Everyone knew what this meant. Something had been here recently, something big enough to leave debris scattered across millions of cubic kilometers of space. "Take us to the largest concentration of metal traces," Zora commanded, "and prepare the collection drones. I want samples of everything." As they moved deeper into the field, the readings grew stronger. What they found made Zora's scales stand on end. Embedded in a massive asteroid were the twisted remains of what had once been a structure. The metal was unlike anything in Confederation databases, formed into shapes that seemed both alien and strangely familiar. "Launch the drones," Zora ordered. "Full analysis of all materials." The small collection drones detached from the Time's silent wing times and began gathering samples from the wreckage. As the analysis proceeded, the results grew more disturbing with each passing minute. "Captain," Kip's voice was barely a whisper, "these readings can't be correct." "What is it?" "The metal samples contain trace amounts of genetic material. The degradation suggests it was deposited between 6 and 18 months ago." Kip paused, his 4 hands shaking as he checked his instruments again. "Captain, it's human genetic material." The words hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Human. That was impossible. Humans had been extinct for 50 years. Every ship had been destroyed, every colony obliterated, every refuge hunted down and eliminated. "Run the analysis again," Zora commanded, though she already knew the results would be the same. "Captain," Ensign Vrak called out, his voice high with panic. "Our navigation system just went offline." Zora spun toward the helm. "What do you mean, offline?" "The entire nav computer is down." No explanation, no warning. It just stopped working. The pilot's hands moved frantically over his controls. "I'm also losing attitude control. Something is interfering with our systems." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. One by one, critical systems started to fail. Communications went dead first, cutting them off from the Confederation fleet. Then, life support began to fluctuate, causing the air to grow thick and stale. "How is this possible?" Kip demanded. "Our systems are hardened against any known interference." But Zora was no longer listening to her crew. Her attention was focused on the sensor display, where something impossible was happening. The asteroids around them were moving, not drifting randomly as they should, but repositioning themselves with purpose and intelligence. "Captain," Vrak whispered, "we're being surrounded." The asteroids closed in slowly, deliberately, forming a rough sphere around the Time's silent wing asterisk. But these weren't natural rocks anymore. As Zora watched in growing horror, sections of the asteroids began to shift and change, revealing hidden machinery beneath their rocky surfaces. "They're artificial," she breathed. "The asteroids are artificial." "Who could build something like this?" Kip asked. "No species in the Confederation has this technology." But Zora was beginning to understand. The human genetic traces, the advanced technology, the way their systems were being systematically disabled, it all pointed to one impossible conclusion. "The humans," she said quietly. "Somehow, the humans are still alive." The ship shuddered as an unseen force took hold of them. The Times, silent wing times, was being pulled toward one of the larger asteroids, where a docking bay was opening like a hungry mouth. Zora tried to fire the engines, but nothing responded. "They're taking us aboard," reported the pilot, his voice filled with terror. "I can't stop it." As their ship was drawn into the asteroid's interior, Zora caught a glimpse of the hidden chambers within. She saw corridors lined with metal, rooms filled with glowing equipment, and figures moving in the shadows. Figures that walked upright on 2 legs, with familiar silhouettes that had haunted Confederation nightmares for 50 years. The docking bay sealed shut behind them with a sound like thunder. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows throughout the Times, silent wing times, as the crew realized their fate. They were trapped inside what could only be a human facility, surrounded by a species that was supposed to be extinct. "What do we do, Captain?" Kip asked, his 4 arms wrapped around himself in fear. Zora had no answer. Everything she had been taught, everything the Confederation believed, had just been proven wrong. The humans weren't extinct. They were here, in this hidden base, with technology that could disable Confederation ships without firing a shot. Outside the ship, footsteps echoed on the docking bay floor. Heavy, measured steps that belonged to beings the galaxy had thought were gone forever. The steps grew closer, and Zora knew that in minutes, maybe seconds, she would come face to face with humanity's survivors. The question that terrified her most wasn't what the humans wanted. It was how many of them were left, and what they had been doing for the past 50 years while the galaxy celebrated their death. As the airlock began to cycle open, Zora realized that the Confederation's greatest victory might have been their greatest mistake. The airlock hissed open with a sound that made Zora's crew jump back in fear. None of them had ever seen a living human before, only images from historical databases. But the beings who stepped aboard the Times, Silent Wing Times, were unmistakably human. 3 figures entered the bridge, moving with the quiet confidence of experienced soldiers. They wore dark uniforms that seemed to absorb light, and their faces were hidden behind helmets with glowing visors. The leader was smaller than Zora had expected, but there was something in the way she moved that spoke of deadly skill. Captain Zora Thax of the Confederation scout ship Times Silent Wing *, the human said, her voice calm and clear. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the human reconnaissance vessel Times Ghostwalker *. You and your crew are now our prisoners. Zora's translator worked perfectly, but she still couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're human. That's impossible. Your species was destroyed 50 years ago. Elena removed her helmet, revealing a scarred face with dark eyes that had seen too much. Her hair was streaked with gray despite her relatively young appearance. Is that what they tell you in the Confederation? That we were destroyed? Every ship was tracked down and eliminated, Ensign Vrock protested, his voice shaking. Every colony was found and sterilized. We made sure no humans survived. A cold smile played across Elena's lips. You found exactly what we wanted you to find. Decoy ships filled with genetic samples. Abandoned colonies with fake bodies. We've been watching you celebrate our supposed extinction for 50 years. One of Elena's companions, a tall man with mechanical implants covering half his face, stepped forward. Tell them about the evacuation. Captain, they need to understand the scope of their failure. Elena nodded. When your fleets first attacked our outer colonies, we knew we couldn't win a direct war. So we chose a different strategy. We faked our own extinction, while secretly evacuating millions of our people to hidden locations. Hidden where? Zora demanded. We searched everywhere. Our sensors covered every planet, every asteroid, every moon. You searched where you expected to find us, Elena replied. You looked for planets suitable for your kind of life. You scanned star systems with useful resources. You never thought to look in the spaces between the stars. Kip's forearms trembled as he spoke. Between the stars? Nothing can survive in interstellar space. The human with the implants laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Your species think in terms of planets and solar systems. Humans learned to think bigger. We built our new homes in the void between stars, on rogue planets that drift in the darkness, in massive ships that never stay in one place long enough to be detected. Elena gestured to the hidden chambers around them. This asteroid field was once our colony ship Times New Horizon *. When we detected your scout ship approaching, we activated the camouflage systems we've spent decades perfecting. What you see as asteroids are actually the scattered sections of our ship. Quote, your technology, Zora said, struggling to understand. How did you disable our systems so easily? We've had 50 years to study your ships, Captain Thax. Every time you sent a patrol near one of our hidden observation posts, we learned more about your technology. We know every weakness, every vulnerability, every backdoor in your systems. Elena's companion pulled out a device that looked nothing like any human technology in the Confederation databases. This is a quantum disruptor. It can interfere with the fundamental processes that power your computers and engines. Your shields and weapon systems are just as vulnerable. But you're primitives, Vrock protested weakly. Your technology was centuries behind ours when we destroyed you. The scarred human woman's expression hardened. When you destroyed us, we were a peaceful species spread across hundreds of worlds. We were scientists, and farmers, and artists. But you turned us into something else. You forced us to become what we needed to become. Elena walked to the main viewing screen, which still showed the hidden chambers of the asteroid base. Every human child born in the last 50 years has been raised with one purpose: to prepare for this day. We've become the greatest military force the galaxy has ever seen, and you never even knew we existed. This is just one base, Zora said, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. However many of you survived, it can't be enough to threaten the Confederation. The human captain turned back to her with that cold smile. This isn't our main base, Captain. This is just a monitoring station, one of hundreds scattered throughout the galaxy. Our real fleets, our real weapons, our real colonies. Those are hidden where you'll never find them. How many? Kip whispered. How many humans survived? Enough, Elena replied simply. More than enough. The human with the implants activated another device, and the bridge's main screen changed to show star charts that Zora had never seen before. Hidden routes through space, marked locations in the void between systems, and what looked like massive fleet formations moving through the darkness. For 50 years, you've patrolled the galaxy thinking you were safe, Elena continued. But we've been watching you from the shadows. We know your patrol routes, your fleet positions, your defensive capabilities. We've infiltrated your communication networks and studied your military doctrine. Why? Zora asked desperately. Why reveal yourselves now? Why not stay hidden? Elena's expression became deadly serious. Because it's time to come home. We've spent 5 decades preparing for this moment. We've built fleets that can match your entire Confederation Navy. We've developed weapons you can't defend against. And we've learned patience. What do you want from us? Zora demanded. Information, the implanted human answered. Current fleet positions. Defensive formations. Command codes. Everything you know about Confederation military capabilities. We won't betray our people. Ensign Vrock said, with more courage than Zora expected from the young officer. Elena nodded with what might have been respect. I didn't expect you would. But we don't need your cooperation. Our technology can extract the information directly from your ship's computers. As if summoned by her words, more humans entered the bridge. They moved with the same quiet efficiency, connecting strange devices to the Time's Silent Wings Times control panels. Within minutes, they were downloading decades of classified Confederation data. This violation will not go unnoticed, Zora warned. When we fail to report in, the fleet will come looking for us. Let them come, Elena replied. We'll be waiting. The human captain moved close to Zora, her dark eyes reflecting years of planning and preparation. I want you to deliver a message to your Admiral Vex High. Tell him that the humans are coming home. Tell him that the species he thought he destroyed has spent 50 years becoming something he never imagined. And if he doesn't believe me, Elena smiled, but this time there was genuine warmth in the expression. He will, because in exactly 72 hours, the Confederation is going to discover just how wrong they were about humanity's extinction. We're going to show them what we've become. The humans finished their data extraction and began to withdraw from the bridge. Elena paused at the airlock and looked back at the terrified alien crew. Your ship's systems will be restored in 1 hour. You'll have full power and communications. When you return to your fleet, remember this moment. Remember that the greatest mistake your people ever made was assuming that humans would simply disappear. As the humans departed, Zora felt the weight of what she had learned. Humanity wasn't extinct. They had been planning and preparing in the shadows for half a century. And now, they were ready to reveal themselves to a galaxy that thought it was safe. The question was no longer whether the humans had survived. The question was what they planned to do next. Admiral Vex High stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Times Galactic Fury *, watching as the largest fleet in Confederation history assembled around him. 3,000 ships from 12 different species formed a deadly formation that stretched across several light hours of space. The combined firepower was enough to destroy entire star systems. Captain Thax's report is impossible, declared General Cross from his position at the tactical station. The massive Ursani commander's fur bristled with anger. Humans cannot have survived. We would have detected them, but Vexhai wasn't so sure. The scout ship's sensor logs were genuine, and the human genetic samples were undeniably real. More troubling were the gaps in the Time's Silent Wings Time's memory banks, as if someone had carefully selected which data to steal and which to leave behind. Perhaps some humans escaped our initial purge, suggested Commander Slicks. The Xerion scales had turned pale with worry. A few survivors hiding in the outer rim could not threaten our entire civilization. A few survivors could not build the technology Captain Thax described, Vexhai replied coldly. The device that disabled her ship was beyond anything in our databases. If humans developed that capability, we need to know how much else they've created. The fleet's final ships dropped out of hyperspace, completing the massive formation. Every major class of Confederation vessel was represented. Zaltharan battle cruisers with their particle beam arrays, Ursani assault ships loaded with kinetic weapons, Xerion stealth destroyers, and Vorthak crystal ships that could manipulate energy itself. All ships report ready for combat operations, announced the communications officer. The fleet awaits your orders, Admiral. Vexhai studied the star charts, showing their destination. Sector 847 looked empty on every scan. But he had learned not to trust appearances. Take us to the coordinates where the humans were encountered. Battle Formation Alpha. All ships to maintain maximum sensor range. The fleet began its approach to the asteroid field, where Captain Thax had made her disturbing discovery. 3,000 ships moving in perfect formation, their combined sensor array capable of detecting a single molecule from light years away. But as they drew closer to their destination, something felt wrong. The space around them seemed too quiet, too empty. Even the background radiation was muted, as if something was absorbing energy from the void itself. Admiral, called out the sensor operator, a young Melody whose 4 arms moved nervously over his instruments. I'm reading some unusual gravitational fluctuations in our path. Explain, Vexhai demanded. The readings suggest mass concentrations that aren't showing up on visual or energy scans. It's as if something large is present, but invisible to our sensors. General Crows leaned over the sensor station. Equipment malfunction. Our instruments are the most advanced in the galaxy. Nothing can hide from them. But as they watched, the gravitational readings grew stronger and more complex. Whatever was out there was moving, repositioning itself around the Confederation fleet with purpose and intelligence. Admiral, the communications officer called out urgently. I'm receiving reports from ships throughout the fleet. Multiple vessels are detecting similar gravitational anomalies. Vexhai felt his purple markings dim with growing unease. All ships, maintain formation. Increase sensor power to maximum. The order was barely complete when space itself seemed to shimmer around them. The stars began to shift and dance in ways that violated every law of physics. Reality bent and twisted as if viewed through water. What is happening? General Cross demanded, his massive hands gripping the tactical console. Before anyone could answer, the impossible occurred. Ships began to appear around them, not approaching from a distance, not dropping out of hyperspace, but materializing directly in their midst, as if they had always been there. Human ships, hundreds of them. They were unlike anything in Confederation databases. Sleek, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each ship bristled with weapons that pulsed with unknown energies. They had appeared in perfect formation, surrounding the Confederation fleet from every angle. How is this possible? Whispered Commander Slicks. No technology can achieve true invisibility. But Vexhai was beginning to understand the horrible truth. The humans hadn't just hidden themselves for 50 years. They had developed technology that made them undetectable even when present. They had been watching the Confederation fleet approach, studying their formations, analyzing their capabilities, all while remaining completely invisible. Sir, the sensor operator reported in a shaking voice, I count over 800 human vessels. They're positioned throughout our entire formation. Some of them are less than a kilometer from our ships. The largest human vessel, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the Times Galactic Fury asterisk, positioned itself directly in front of the Confederation flagship. Its dark hull was marked with symbols that looked both alien and disturbingly familiar. All ships, prepare for combat, Vex High ordered. But his voice lacked conviction. The humans had achieved perfect tactical position without firing a shot. Any battle would be a massacre. Before the Confederation weapons could charge, every communication channel on every ship was simultaneously activated. The secure frequencies that only high-ranking officers knew about. The emergency channels reserved for fleet-wide disasters. Even the personal communication devices carried by individual crew members. Admiral Vex High of the Zaltharon Confederation. A human voice spoke across all channels at once. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Human Fleet. Your armada is surrounded and at our mercy. The voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its confidence. Vex High realized that not only had the humans penetrated their communications, they had done it so completely that resistance was meaningless. Impossible, General Cross roared. Our communication systems are quantum encrypted. No one can break those codes. Admiral Chen's voice continued as if she had heard his protest. For 50 years, you celebrated our extinction while we watched from the shadows. We studied your technology, learned your weaknesses, and prepared for this moment. Your quantum encryption was broken 30 years ago. Vex High tried to respond, but his communication systems were locked out. The humans controlled every aspect of the Confederation fleet's ability to coordinate or command. You believe your ships are invincible, Admiral Chen continued. You believe your combined firepower can destroy any enemy. Allow us to demonstrate how wrong you are. What happened next would be remembered in Confederation history as the moment their supremacy ended. Without firing a single shot, the human fleet began to demonstrate their technological superiority. Confederation ships found their weapon systems cycling offline one by one. Shield generators fluctuated wildly before stabilizing at reduced power. Engine efficiency dropped by 30% across the entire fleet. They're interfering with our systems at the quantum level, the chief engineer reported to Vex High. I can't compensate. It's as if they know exactly how our technology works and are countering it in real time. The human admiral's voice remained maddeningly calm. Your weapons cannot lock onto our ships. Your shields cannot stop our weapons. Your engines cannot outrun our pursuit. We have spent 50 years preparing for this encounter, Admiral Vex High. We know every detail of your technology because we designed the countermeasures. Through the chaos of system failures and panicked reports, Vex High began to understand the magnitude of their defeat. The humans had not simply survived the Great Cleansing. They had used it as motivation to become something far more dangerous than they had ever been before. What do you want? Vex High managed to broadcast on one of the few channels still under his control. To go home, Admiral Chen replied simply. And to ensure that no species ever again makes the mistake of trying to destroy humanity. As the human ships maintained their perfect formation around the helpless Confederation fleet, Vex High realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. The species they thought they had eliminated 50 years ago had returned stronger, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous than before. The Great Cleansing had not destroyed humanity. It had forged them into something that could destroy everyone else. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the human flagship Times Endurance asterisk, looking out at the Confederation fleet trapped within her formation. 50 years of careful planning had led to this moment. 50 years of hidden preparation, technological development, and patient waiting. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These were not the humans the aliens remembered from their history books. These were the children and grandchildren of survivors, raised in the cold darkness between stars, trained from birth to be the instruments of humanity's return. Admiral, reported Commander Torres from the tactical station. All Confederation vessels are disabled. Their weapon systems are offline, shields are operating at minimal power, and engines are functioning at 30% capacity. Chen nodded. her expression calm despite the magnitude of the moment. Through her ship's communication systems, she could hear the panicked chatter from hundreds of alien vessels. Fear, confusion, and growing desperation filled the airwaves as the reality of their situation became clear. "Open a direct channel to Admiral Vex-High," she commanded. "It's time for them to understand what they're facing." The main screen shifted to show the bridge of the Zaltharon flagship. Admiral Vex-High stood rigid at his command station, his purple markings dim with shock and defeat. Around him, his officers stared at their useless control panels with expressions of disbelief. "Admiral Vex-High," Chen began, her voice carrying clearly across the void between ships. "I believe introductions are in order. I am Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the First Human Fleet. The ship you're looking at is the Times Endurance Asterisk, one of over 2,000 vessels in our immediate battle group." Vex-High's jaw worked silently for several seconds before he found his voice. 2,000 ships? Impossible. Our intelligence indicates that no human manufacturing capability could exist without our knowledge. Chen's smile held no warmth. "Your intelligence was designed to see what we wanted you to see. For 50 years, you've been patrolling a galaxy where humans never truly disappeared. We've been in the asteroid fields, in the void between systems, in places your limited imagination never thought to search." Behind her, the tactical display showed the true scope of human presence. Not just the ships currently surrounding the Confederation fleet, but the massive formations moving through dark space throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of fleets, thousands of ships, millions of humans who had spent their entire lives preparing for this day. "This is just the beginning," Chen continued. "What you see here is a fraction of our total capability. While you celebrated our extinction, we built the largest military force in galactic history." General Krause's voice crackled over the communication channel, filled with desperate bravado. "You may have achieved surprise, but you're still outnumbered. The Confederation has millions of ships across hundreds of systems." "Had," Chen corrected calmly. "Past tense, General. Your fleets are scattered across the galaxy, following patrol patterns we've studied for decades. As we speak, human forces are emerging from concealment at every major Confederation base." The tactical officer beside her activated a galaxy-wide display. Hundreds of red indicators appeared across known space, each marking a location where human ships were revealing themselves. The Confederation's mighty fleets were being surrounded simultaneously across dozens of star systems. "Admiral Vex-High," Chen said, her voice taking on the tone of a teacher instructing a slow student. "Your species made a fundamental error 50 years ago. You assumed that defeating humanity required only superior firepower. You never understood what made us dangerous." "And what was that?" Vex-High asked, though his voice suggested he already feared the answer. "Adaptability," Chen replied. "When you destroyed our worlds, we learned to live in space. When you hunted our ships, we learned to become invisible. When you eliminated our technology, we built something better. You turned us into the perfect weapon against yourselves." Commander Torres looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from over 300 Confederation vessels. Their crews are terrified." Chen nodded but kept her attention on Vex-High. "Your officers are wiser than their commanders, Admiral. They recognize a hopeless situation when they see it." "What are your terms?" Vex-High asked quietly, his purple markings now completely dark. "Simple," Chen replied. "Complete withdrawal from all star systems within 50 light-years of former human territory. Recognition of humanity's right to exist and expand. And most importantly, a guarantee that no species will ever again attempt genocide against any other species. And if we refuse?" Chen's expression hardened. "Then you discover what 50 years of human military development can accomplish when unleashed without restraint. We have weapons that can sterilize planets from orbit, technologies that can collapse stars, and the patience to hunt down every Confederation world until your civilizations exist only in history books." She gestured to the display showing human fleet positions. "This galaxy belongs to all species, Admiral." But if any species chooses to follow your example of genocide, they will face the same choice you face now: coexistence or extinction. The communication channel remained silent for several minutes as Vex High consulted with his commanders. Chen could see the desperate discussions taking place on the alien bridge, the frantic checking of sensors that confirmed their helplessness. Finally, Vex High spoke again. The Confederation Council will need to discuss these terms. The Confederation Council disbanded 30 minutes ago, Chen informed him casually. Our operatives have been embedded in your government for 20 years. When we revealed ourselves here, we simultaneously provided evidence of your war crimes to every member species. Your authority to speak for the galaxy died the moment you realized we still existed. This was the final blow that broke Vex High's composure. His legs gave out, and he collapsed into his command chair. The admiral who had proudly celebrated humanity's destruction now faced the complete dissolution of everything he had built. However, Chen continued, we are not interested in conquest or revenge. We want peace, but a peace based on mutual respect rather than the fear of extermination. You have a choice, Admiral. Order your fleets to withdraw from human space, and this conflict ends here. Continue to threaten us, and we will show you why the galaxy was never as safe as you believed. The human admiral gestured, and her tactical officer activated another system. Throughout the Confederation fleet, alien ships began receiving detailed scans of their own vessels. Every weapon, every system, every structural weakness was identified and transmitted back to them. These scans represent 50 years of intelligence gathering, Chen explained. We know every ship design, every tactical doctrine, every defensive strategy your species have developed. You have no secrets from us, Admiral. You never did. Vex High looked at the scan results with growing horror. The humans didn't just understand Confederation technology. They understood it better than the beings who built it. Every weakness was mapped, every vulnerability exposed. I surrender, he said quietly. The fleet surrenders. Chen nodded with something that might have been respect. A wise decision. Your ships will be escorted to the edge of human space and released. You will carry a message to every government, every species, every world in the galaxy. What message? That humanity has returned. We bear no grudge against species that had no part in our persecution. But we will never again permit genocide to be attempted against any sentient beings. The galaxy has changed, Admiral. It's time for everyone to learn the new rules. As the human escort ships moved into position around the defeated Confederation fleet, Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The long exile was over. Humanity would no longer hide in the shadows, no longer live in fear of discovery. The species that thought they had eliminated mankind had instead created something far more dangerous, a unified humanity with 50 years of focused purpose and unlimited motivation. The galaxy would never again underestimate the determination of the human species. Chen opened a channel to her fleet commanders. Begin Phase 2. Take positions at all major trade routes and communication hubs. It's time to announce our return to the entire galaxy. As the human ships dispersed to their new assignments, Chen looked out at the stars that had been denied to her people for 5 decades. Those stars belonged to humanity again. Not through conquest or destruction, but through the simple truth that some species could not be destroyed. They could only be made stronger. The age of Confederation supremacy was over. The age of human guardianship had begun, and the galaxy would learn that the greatest mistake any species could make was assuming that humanity would simply disappear when threatened. Some species ran when faced with extinction. Others hid or begged for mercy. Humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, prepared.